Hi everyone, and welcome to October 2022 Romania Power BI and Modern Excel User Group. Thank you all for joining for the 10th meetup of the year, and I think the 21st in total, with a very special guest today, uh, Matthew Roche. Thank you, Matthew, for accepting our invitation. And as I said, I'm honored to have you here. I know it's in the middle of the working day for you, and we are really grateful that you could find a slot in your schedule to visit us. For our newest members, my name is Cristian Angel, and I will be your host today. The agenda for today it's pretty straightforward. We are in the welcome and overview part. I'll present the next meetups. Then Matthew will have his feature presentation. We'll have a live Q&A in the end if we need something more than what we have during the presentation. And then we will wrap up with the ROPAG 21st. I see my slide, it's wrong here. We will have a Raffle at the end with prizes from Enterprise DNA, and I'll tell you a bit more about it in a few minutes. Some organizational stuff for the meetup. Please make sure that during the session your microphone is muted and your video is turned off. Type your questions in the chat area with a Q in front so we can spot them easier. If you have problems with your internet connection, please drop off and join again. And please be advised that the meeting is recorded, and we will post the recording on YouTube afterwards. In terms of future meetups, in November, we will have a magical session with M in Power Query with Melissa De Corte. And then in December, but I don't know exactly the date yet, we will have Andrei Lapaine coming with something that Zebra BI just launched, the Zebra BI for Office. For who knows Zebra BI from Power BI will be surprised to know that they launched the Office add-ins for Excel and PowerPoint, and Andrei will come to demo this for us. In terms of past meetups, just go to bit.ly/ropag_history, and you will see all our past meetups recorded there. As I said at the beginning, Enterprise DNA is our primary official sponsor starting last year in August, and they are offering on each of our live meetups 2 full packages of 1-year membership on their platform and 1 annual Analyst Hub membership. And in order to be able to get one of those, first, you are here, and this is the first condition. You have to be present in the live meetups. And second, you have to fill up this form, put your option whether you want to participate in the raffle or not, and we will have the raffle that I was talking about in the end of our meetup. I just want to have one more shout out on one event that it's coming here in Eastern Europe. So in November in Sofia, Bulgaria, there will be the 4th edition of the International Conference Bulgaria Excel Days. For the 4th year, the event organized by IT Training with the courtesy of Microsoft Bulgaria will bring together some of the world's most famous experts in the field of Excel, Power BI, VBA, financial modeling, data analysis, and visualization. And in addition to the conference, there will be 5 master classes and 12 top speakers in the official event. I totally recommend attending this one. I will be there, and I was there 3 years ago when this was actually the last in-person conference in Eastern Europe on Excel. So just a big shout out to this conference. I loved it, and I totally recommend for whoever wants to join to come to Sofia and meet these great speakers. So coming back to our session today, welcome again, Matthew, and thanks again for accepting the invitation. I cannot say thank you enough. I'm really happy to you found some time in your schedule for our community, and we're really looking forward to hear you here. For who doesn't know Matthew, he's a member of the Power BI customer advisory team since 4 or 5 years now, I think. He's one of the architects of the adoption roadmap together with Melissa Coates. And he is the guy that almost always has a sword in his background in Teams meeting. We were just laughing before we started. In his new office, the swords are not that visible, but as you can see, he has them all the time with them. Previously, Matthew has worked on Azure Data Catalog, SQL Server Integration Services, all kind of different departments in Microsoft. And before joining Microsoft, he worked as an architect, consultant, and trainer focusing on ETL, data warehousing, and business intelligence. Matthew is also the author of Roche Maxim. For who doesn't know, this is something that I have very dear to my heart, which says data should be transformed as far upstream as possible and as far downstream as necessary, which, by the way, is pinned on my Twitter account, and I will put the link in the chat for who doesn't know it and who wants to see it. We've met in person back in March, I think, at SQL Bits in London, where Matthew delivered my favorite session in the entire SQL Bits, a non-technical session, unleashing your personal superpower. And I will also put this link because it's really worthwhile to watch it. I'm telling you, being there was totally different than just watching the recording, but you will see, you'll love it. And I'm really happy to meet you again, Matthew. And why not greet you in person next time in Romania?
Well, I would love that. And I want to say, like, first of all, the honor is all mine. I want to start off with like a quick personal introduction and specifically mention the last time that I was in Romania. So this is my little intro slide. Christian has already talked about the details, but here's a picture of me in 2010 with friends from Bulgaria and Germany when I was in Bucharest for the Sonosphere Festival where Manowar was playing. And I had flown into Sofia, Bulgaria the week before, had gone to the Sonosphere Festival there, drove across from Sofia to Bucharest. So it's the only land entry and land exit stamps on my passport, like my very full passport back when I used to travel a lot. And the thing that I found in those days was that like heavy metal, that Manowar fan community, like people of all ages from around the world brought together and united by this common purpose. It felt like this one big family. And in a very different, but also very similar way, Power BI and data.
Just like this one.
Just like this one, this global community where we come from different backgrounds in different countries, but we have the opportunity to share, to learn from each other, like to build this community that otherwise wouldn't exist. It really feels magical to me. And it's amazing. I'm embarrassed and honored to have such a warm welcome. But with that said, I'd love to jump in and talk about like the reason that we're here today. So may I run with it from here?
The stage is yours. Thank you
Thank
very
you
much.
thank you so much. So back in the day, so I've been at Microsoft for almost 15 years. And before I joined Microsoft, I did like consulting, architecture, like I was the data warehouse and ETL guy that would help my customers build solutions. I spent about 10 years building Microsoft data and BI products. So I was a PM shipping features, as Christian mentioned earlier. And for the last 4.5 years or so, I've been a member of the Power BI customer advisory team, where a lot of what I do is talking with customers about what they're trying to do to understand their goals and their motivations, and where we can improve the product, but also really having that deep, nuanced, holistic view of why customers are motivated to use Power BI or Azure or Excel or other tools in the first place. And one of the reasons why this is my favorite talk to do, I was reviewing the slides today, and the more I looked, the more I got genuinely excited. It's because it brings all of these different things together. It's not about the technology. It's not about the architecture. It's not about the solutions. It's about all of those things and the people and their motivations and the way that they all come together. And I'd like to start off today's talk by grounding us in sort of where we are and how we got here, with a brief history of business intelligence in general. And if you step back and only look at the big picture, this is what business intelligence has looked like for the last 20 or 25 years. On the left-hand side of the slide, we've got the transactional systems, those OLTP line of business databases or other places where data is being produced. Like, this is where the data comes from. It's where it's created, it's updated, it's maintained. There's those ETL processes, or ELT or ETLT, like some sort of data preparation process that brings it down into a data warehouse or data lake. There's these OLAP, the OLAP models or tabular models, or the data models built on top of it for ease of analysis. And then there's reports and dashboards and other data visualization or delivery. And in many ways, obviously the details are different and the tools have evolved a lot. Like, there's a lot that we can do now that we couldn't do 10 or 15 or 20 years ago. But the biggest change in these broader patterns is the fact that self-service BI has made it so that more people from more backgrounds can implement more parts of this end-to-end architecture, like marketecture, like the big boxes and arrows view. So in Power BI in particular, you can have self-service data prep in Power Query. You can have the self-service data warehousey type things with data flows or data marts. We've always had data sets for the OLAP side, and we've always had the reporting and dashboarding and so on for data visualization. But let's ask ourselves a question: why do we want this? Like, why do we have self-service business intelligence at all, much less self-service BI and Power BI? And the reason, like the motivation that the industry and the market changed, is that IT could not keep up. So I'm old enough to remember back in the day where if you wanted a report, you had to go to IT and wait months for a developer to write the code to give you the data that you wanted. If you wanted a report changed, you had to go to IT and wait months for these things. And the realistic view is business cannot wait months for the information that they need to make business decisions. And without tools like Power BI, Excel, or like third-party tools, if you're using MicroStrategy or Tableau or ClickView or whatever, all of these challenges and patterns still apply. But the short answer is, this is where we are today, where there are pro tools for the IT people to use. There are self-service tools for the pro IT and business-centric users to use. And what we really need is a culture that enables, empowers, and encourages the proper use of these tools. So think about that end to end, and think about how in your organization or in your day-to-day life, those different pieces fit together. Who does what? If you need someone else to do work to enable you to do the work that you need to do, like, how do you ask? Are they responsive? Do they support you? Think about those aspects of things as I start talking about culture. So when we say data culture, the most important part of this is not the data part, it's the culture part. And a culture is really for a group or community or society of people, what are the beliefs, customs, and institutions that define that group? It's what people do, not what they say. Like in the US, we use Fahrenheit for our temperatures. We drive on the right side of the road. Like there's a specific system of government. In the UK, they have a different government. They drive on the other side of the road. They use Celsius, but they still use imperial measures for measuring things. Like think about this for culture, and think about how like the music that you listen to, the food that you eat, the way that you engage with the world, like these are all aspects of what define the culture that you are in. And then think about, how do people use data? How do the people in your life, in your organization, in your lived reality, how do they work with data? Because a data culture is really the social practice of using data to make more data-driven, data-informed decisions as part of the operation of a business. And I'm basically, like, I'm stealing these. These are screenshots of standard definitions from the internet. But if you think about this, the culture is what you do every day. It's like it's what you do when you're not looking. It's what the group does in general. But the outputs of a healthy, successful, mature data culture look like this. And like I'm not going to read any slides today except for a couple quotes at the end of the slide. But like look through this and ask yourself, is this the world that you live in today, where you can take for granted that everybody is making decisions from trusted data sources, that when you need something, whether it's data or analytics or a tool, that you can get the thing that you need, that you, like whether you're on the IT side or the business side, that you can focus on the part of that end-to-end that aligns with your priorities and your strengths, while knowing that the other side of the equation is focusing on the things where they have strengths, so that you don't need to worry about that, which typically means IT focuses on the architecture and like the big heavy lifting, and business users focus on getting insights from the right data at the right time and acting on it. And if you want to live in a world like this session is basically talking about what I have learned from working with hundreds of major Power BI customer organizations around the world. Like I've literally had hundreds and hundreds of conversations with these strategic leaders in the world's biggest companies, talking about what they do, how they do it, but more importantly, why they do it and how well it worked. And a lot of the insights that I'm sharing here and in the resources that I will link to at the end, I've gained these not as much from my personal experience. Like I've been there and I've done that, but not on this scale, not in the real world. The insights that I'm sharing here are coming from those hundreds of customer organizations that I've worked with to put together the most important things that you would need to do to start moving towards that utopian future world where data falls like manna from the heavens or from the cloud, I guess, and everybody has the resources that they need to work with. So the most important thing, like if you need to drop, like if your wife goes into labor and you need to run to the hospital right now, I've put the most important tip, the single most important success factor right at the beginning, and that is, if you do not have an executive sponsor, you will not succeed doing the things that I'm describing today. So if you don't have an executive sponsor, you're going to fail. And hopefully, like my little mic drop animation, so that was what this slide was doing. That was my mic drop, because this is such an important point. I don't want you to despair if you don't have an executive sponsor, but the scope of any data culture is typically defined by the scope of authority of the executive sponsor that's supporting these efforts. So if your executive sponsor is the CEO or another C-level executive with broad organizational support, like you're playing on the easy mode. Like it's the same game. You still need to go through the same levels, but you're playing on the easiest possible difficulty. Whereas if you don't have an executive sponsor, it's like running a marathon in sand. Like running a marathon is always hard. Like doing the things that we're talking about today, they're not going to be easy for anyone. But if you don't have an executive sponsor, everything is going to be harder than you need it to be. And basically, when you stop pushing, the value will immediately start to fall away. And the reason for this is most of the things that I'm going to talk about today, they're not things that you can do alone. There are things where you need to start putting pressure to encourage behaviors and having others say, oh, yeah, that's a great idea. I'm going to do that thing too. I agree with you. And because like humans are complicated, right? I'll come back to this point in a couple slides, but people are hard. And that means that in order to get them to do the things that they would need to do to be part of the journey towards this future utopia, you do need to have a little bit of pressure. You need to have both the carrot and the stick. And at least according to the internet, there is an African proverb that says, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. Building a data culture is going far. You need people along with you as you go. And having an executive sponsor makes all the difference. So I want to tell two quick stories. So one is a top-down approach. And this is the best practice. And this is my life. So my executive, when he sees data being shared, he promotes it, he praises it, he encourages it. Like when you come in using one of the reports that he has helped sponsor and fund the team that's doing the work, like there's never any questions. It's always, let's just focus on the business decision that we're trying to make. And he's constantly encouraging and stressing and meeting after meeting and email after email. It's like, I've got this data from this trusted data set and I'm making these decisions based on it. But if you come to a meeting where business decisions need to be made and you're pulling in data from another source, we're going to spend time, we're going to spend serious time explaining, where does the data come from? How is it calculated? Why are we not using the trusted source? What's the plan for getting this data into the trusted source? Because if it comes into one of my meetings, if it's on my radar, it should be coming from this source. So with that type of support, anytime that a user in my org needs someone else to take action to work towards shared goals of having the right data available to the right people at the right time, it's the easiest conversation because they hear it from their boss and their boss's boss and their boss's boss's boss and so on. And as Julius has put into chat, it's like hitting the lottery. So my analogy is playing the video game on the easy mode. I like the lottery as well because if you got $1 million, everything's easier. I have another story to tell, and this is the opposite. So this is someone that did not have an executive sponsor, but what part of his job, part of his day-to-day responsibilities in the finance org of a massive global multi-billion-dollar organization, part of his job was taking Power BI reports, taking screenshots into PowerPoint, printing out the PowerPoint decks and delivering the printouts or sharing, evangelizing the printouts with C-suite level executives. And what he did, he's a master sneaky, I don't want to say manipulator because that is there's too many negative connotations there. But this person, this finance manager, he understood what motivated the executives, more timely decisions, the right data in the right place. They really need this to be to be as responsive as possible, but they were stuck in their old ways. They didn't understand the art of the possible. So what Tim did, and hey, Tim, if you ever see the recording, I always use this story, but what Tim did was he started bringing a laptop, an iPhone, an iPad with live reports to more and more meetings, and he would arrange to just happen to be in the elevator with the executive, the chief financial officer for his business unit at the same time. And over the course of a couple months, he let people know it's this is what we could be doing if only we made this small change. And 5 or 6 little changes later, Tim actually ended up leading a new group that was responsible to build a center of excellence and community of practice for Power BI because he got that top-down support by starting at the bottom. So people are a key aspect of things. But I want to start with the easy part. So like I've painted this picture. I've talked about how the executive sponsor is important. There's two main parts to building a data culture. We'll start with the easy part, which is technology. And when we're thinking about the technology, like the data, the tools, the features, the most important thing to keep in mind is that you cannot boil the ocean. Like, even though I guess humanity, we're trying our hardest to do this and we're making progress. But here, I mean, you can't solve every problem all at once, right? You need to pick and choose. You need to pick your battles. And this means understanding what level of control, oversight, guidance, enablement is appropriate for what different parts of your data estate, the data ecosystem. One key aspect of a data culture is understanding what we can and should or must do with what data, what systems, and what reports. And in this, this triangle diagram, we're basically showing one view of your reality today. Like, whether or not you've looked at it this way, you live here. And down at the bottom of the pyramid, we have the very large number of personal reporting artifacts. Like, you build something in Power BI, you build it in Excel, like you're working with data to make your own decisions, and you either never share it with anyone or you share it with a very small number of people that you work with directly. So developed by someone in the business for the business use. These things typically don't need any control or oversight, right? You make them, you use them, you throw them away. At the very top, we've got those systems of record that are subject to compliance constraints. Like here in the US, we have a law known as Sarbanes-Oxley, after the people that passed the law. And if we boil it down, if you report publicly financial numbers that are false, the executives responsible for those numbers can go to prison, like serious prison time. And as, like, at least in my experience, executives hate prison time. So they're really, really careful about the quality and provenance and currency of those numbers. And the systems that produce those numbers are owned by IT and managed by IT, and there's like tight controls and governance around them. And in between, there is a great spectrum. And what you need to understand is that for each type of system, it's vital to have consistent criteria and responsibilities to say, like for let's say departmental reporting, which is kind of in the middle, this is how we identify what falls into this bucket. Like, it has these characteristics, and this is how we control it, like the type of oversight, the type of documentation. And if we put this into concrete terms, it might be something like, this needs to run on a Power BI premium capacity, and there needs to be clearly defined owners that are labeled in the workspace, and there needs to be documentation that's maintained on a monthly or quarterly basis and published as part of the Power BI app. Like, I made those details up on the fly, but those types of criteria and responsibilities are something that is the first steps. You need to look and see, what do I need to do with each system? And it's worth emphasizing as well, where the line is, it really doesn't matter. This is going to depend on like your broader organizational culture, like how risk averse, like, are you used to running fast or walking slowly? And are you in a highly regulated industry? So like, where the line is doesn't matter, but what does matter is there's a line, and people agree, like the people that need to agree on where the line is. So another way to look at this is by using a specific example. And this is a slide that tells the Microsoft finance story. Like, I've taken the numbers out, but we shared this story under NDA during executive briefings and other like Microsoft NDA type presentations to show some of the ways that Microsoft is changing our culture by using the right data in the right way. And starting at the left-hand side of the slide, 10 or 15 years ago, we really had a cowboy culture. So every team and every department had a SQL server under somebody's desk. They had their own copies of the numbers. They generated their own reports. And there was this really strong cultural momentum to everybody doing their own things their own way and not standardizing. And part of the culture change that Satya Nadella has driven since he's taken over Microsoft as CEO is eliminating these challenges. Like as you can imagine, if there's 3 teams presenting in a quarterly business review, each team is going to have its own version of the same numbers. We'd waste a ton of time like focus on like, well, that doesn't look like this. Where does this number come from? Like we don't have those conversations anymore because we have a general approach that we summarize as discipline at the core and flexibility at the edge. And from a Microsoft perspective, this essentially means that for well-defined business critical data domains like sales and finance and other things with dollar signs next to them, for the most part, there is a single system of record where all of that is managed and maintained and mastered by a large team that this is their only job. And we require everyone to use that one source of data anytime that they're reporting on the numbers that it contains. But at the same time, beyond this disciplined core, we say to everyone, but if you have other numbers that you need to report on, like start with this core, but bring in your own stuff. Like build a composite model. If we put this into the Power BI world, like build a composite model that in addition to this certified data set, you might bring in data from your own system, from Excel, from a SharePoint list to make the decisions that you need to make. And the key characteristic here is that for the things that always need to be right, they're always right because they come from one place or the very small number of places where there's a team whose job it is to keep it right. And for the places where the business needs to run fast and not be blocked on IT's responsiveness, well, like everybody has a Power BI license, right? Everybody has Excel, everybody has the tools that they need so that they can do the additive work that's outside of that. The flexibility at the edge enables the agility that the business demands to survive. So I mentioned that I've had hundreds, like literally hundreds of conversations with these strategic decision makers from large enterprise Power BI organizations. This slide is like the summary, it's the distilled aggregate of what I see successful organizations doing at scale. So this is kind of like the pyramid view that we looked at 2 slides ago, but it's basically how customers have described to me how they organize things. So the outer ring, we've got everybody, like anybody that wants to work with data or the criteria that we've defined, because not every organization is the same. They do their own thing. They use Power BI Desktop. Like that's it. When we get to team, like a smaller number of people developing a smaller number of higher reach, higher value solutions, they're working in Power BI. They've got pro licenses. They share across the team. The departmental apps, like again, smaller number of higher value, higher reach apps. This typically is deployed to Power BI Premium for the licensing advantage for a very large number of readers and a smaller number of authors. And there are well-defined gates, which we'll talk about in 2 slides from now, for applications to reach this ring and to be qualified to be deployed to those premium solutions or premium capacities. And then at the core, we've got like traditional enterprise BI, IT people doing dev work to build these systems of records for analytics with all of the full support model. Like there's an SLA, there's a support team that is prepped and ready to handle any requests. There's uptime guarantees. It's all of that traditional BI. They're just using Power BI with premium enterprise data sets as the implementation. Now, I'm going to keep the same diagram, but I'm going to flip the labels. There is one major North American retail customer that uses this terminology to describe their implementation of this approach. And I want to focus on a few different things. Specifically, this is a retail chain. So when I talk about users, I'm including stock boys, cashiers, department managers or store managers in the store. Like literally, they've made it so that every single user has a Power BI license. Like they've got a blanket Office 365 license, so everybody can connect to shared data sets in the service and do reporting on them. They've got PCs set up in the break rooms and other places in the stores. They're basically saying, hey, like, I don't care what your job is. If you could do your job better by having more access to data that's relevant to your job, you've got the data, you've got the tools. Bam. And this, like, to me, this blows my mind, because who gives their stock boys access to data? These guys do. And because this is like a mega store, I'm not sure how well this is going to translate, but they have like a hardware department, they have a floral department, they have a grocery department, including a butcher shop. And if you think about hardware or flowers or meat, think about the supply chain, the product life cycle that's different. Like if you get a box of screws, you can put them on a shelf and they'll stay there forever. If somebody buys them 20 years from now, they're still good. If you get a pallet of bacon, like it has a shelf life, right? So there's these key departments that have higher data needs. This organization, they recognized the reality of their users' requirements and lives, and they gave them more tools, more training, like bigger PCs, and data sets that are targeted on their particular line of business. They recognized that not all user audiences are the same, and they gave everybody the resources that provide the business value that justifies this expense. Every department has power users, like people like you, like the people that show up to user groups that know more than other people know, that are excited about the technology and in the way that it helps them do their jobs. So this organization, like they empower these power users to do more by giving them more. And at the center, they have what they call their hardcore IT. Like it's like that, the enterprise BI. But the most exciting thing for me, and it's exciting because this is a pattern that I see play out again and again and again, but this one organization, they summed it up so beautifully. They said, and we have gates. So any application, like any BI application that's at a given level, we want to make sure that they can move it to the next level when they need to. So inside that enterprise IT group, they have a center of excellence with office hours. And if you are the store manager, the finance manager, the floral manager, or the stock boy, and you've built an application and you think this needs to be like, it's grown so much, it's delivering real impact for my users, I want it to be maintained by the IT team so that I can focus on my job again. They've got these various gates to move from the outer rings into the internal IT managed hardcore IT. So the exploration phase basically means you, as the self-service author, you bring in your PBIX file or your Excel workbook, you bring it into office hours, you get assigned a buddy and you work with them so that they understand what you're doing, how you're doing it, and why you're doing it. If IT agrees that there's a business justification for promoting it, the next step, that promotion phase, is to get the data source somewhere that we can refresh from, to set up a gateway for refresh if necessary, and to apply like standard themes and colors so that it looks like an official report. It might stop there. It might be that, yep, like this is what you get. We're not going to take ownership of it, but you're in a better space now with scheduled refresh and theming and so on. So the self-service author, you still own it. Like keep running with it. But if there is an opportunity for more business value, this organization says we are going to take ownership of it by moving on to the preparation phase, where we get your data sources out of Excel or SharePoint lists or wherever it lived, into a supportable production-ready data source, like maybe a new Azure SQL database or incorporating the data into an existing database. They work with the self-service users on documentation, and they define owners, like who's the business owner, who's the technical owner, who is the data steward, who is going to own it with support, and then they operationalize it, doing a handoff to an IT team that owns it, setting up a production managed workspace on premium capacity, and setting up like full IT-driven support with a service level agreement and expectations. But the exciting thing is that any user can do this. Any self-service user can come to these office hours and say, I built a thing and it's ready to grow up now. And they have support from this central IT organization to move it up through these gates, assuming that it meets the requirements for each subsequent phase. Not all of them do, but there are clearly defined requirements at each stage. So I'm going to pause. We're at the end of the easy part. And Christian, you've been keeping an eye on chat. Are there any questions about what we've covered so far that we should handle before we move on? So, okay, so I'll read it out loud for myself and for the recording. So in that specific example, how will the company ensure that the security of the data from an access management standpoint? This seems to be, in general, a big fear in most organizations. So there's a bunch to pick apart, but essentially they use the Power BI integration in with God, we've changed the names of everything. Microsoft Defender. I feel like I'm the bad employee now because I can't remember the new names. But basically, there is Azure Active Directory security for all of the things that are in Power BI. So like only authorized users get it. They have the Microsoft Defender protections to make it so that you can only connect to the report from like known locations, like from the stores or from the corporate network. I don't know the exact setup. And they have like a relatively mature compliance and governance process. So in addition to like the broad use, they're just regularly monitoring things in general. Like they're a relatively mature organization, and they're taking advantage of those existing capabilities to manage those risks. And as I think that I see a couple chats there, like most orgs do not want to share for all users. You're absolutely correct. I was throwing this one out there as an example of one particular organization that does, how this applies to this general success pattern that I've seen across many, many organizations, so that we had something concrete to ground it to. But there's no one size fits all. Like no one user is the same, no one org is the same. And if you, in your organization, those circles, because odds are they're there, right? Odds are whether they're well-defined or organic, you have those circles already. So in your organization, the definition may be different, and the outermost circle, it might only be specific departments or specific roles. There is no goal to have every user having access to data and tools. The goal is to have every user that can get value from it having access to data and tools. And that value, that business value, will depend on your business and all of the nuance that comes with it. Okay.
Thank you. This was the only one.
Excellent. Let's talk about the hard part. So the easy part was technology. The hard part is people. So people, apparently the hard part is also putting focus on PowerPoint to advance the slides. So the hard part about any data culture effort is getting the right people involved in the right way. But there are two core things that you need to have in order to do the rest of the work. So first of all, you need a center of excellence. And this is a non-negotiable aspect. It doesn't need to be first, and it doesn't need to be perfect, but you need to have a well-defined group that has, the business decision makers, the IT decision makers, the people who are the representatives of the teams that own the data, they own the systems, they own the processes and tools, where they are brought together with both a mandate to make data available to align with the goals of the organization and a budget to make it possible. And this is the hard thing. Like, this is a lesson you may have learned already, or you may not have learned yet. But I want to share like the harsh learning that I learned when I joined Microsoft. No matter how much a leader says that something is important, if they don't give you money, if they don't give you budget and headcount, it's not actually important. So if somebody says, "Oh, we've got this goal, we've got this initiative, go do it," and you're like, "Okay, well, what what's my budget? How many people do I get? What's the team I'm starting with?" And they're like, "Oh no, this is just an extra thing that I want you to do on top of all of the other things that you're doing." This is not an important thing, and you are not being set up for success. And I hope this is like really obvious when I say it out loud in these blunt, coarse-grained terms. You'll see a lot of subtle variations on this where people will make it look exciting and important, and you only learn after the fact that it's not really. But if you don't have a budget, that means that as soon as things get hard, like as soon as other priorities come up or there's an economic downturn like we're in the middle of right now, this thing that wasn't funded before, like, it's in trouble as soon as things get complicated. But that center of excellence, which could be one group or it could be a federated like network of excellence made up of interconnected centers of excellence, like, it can get complicated. But basically, these are the people that have the mandate to make decisions about how we prioritize investments for making data and tools available for everyone. And I see Christian's question thrown in there. Like, is there a minimum number of employees for when this makes sense? I've never thought about this specific question, but if you're in an organization that is large enough where everybody doesn't always know what everybody else is doing, that's the thing that you look for. Do you have multiple departments that only get together once a week? If you do, then maybe you get one person from each department where they get together every day, or they have a Teams chat set up for ongoing conversation where they're talking more regularly about these types of things. If it's a really small organization, like I've been in startups back in the .com days where like literally we shared a room, like we all had folding tables and we were all talking to each other every day. We did not need a center of excellence because everybody knew what everybody else was doing. And for the medium/small companies, 99% of them, they will benefit from this. But it's hard to get, and we're going to talk about motivation pretty quickly. It's hard to get people motivated until they feel the pain. So my initial answer was basically, oh yeah, if you don't talk to each other every day, like if you don't always know what everybody else is doing, that's your key. Realistically, you're not going to get people motivated to work until it hurts. So when do you start seeing people with different numbers on different reports? When do you see people who can't do their job because they can't find or use the data that they need? Like, those are often the triggers. Those are the red flags that you look for to say, you've got this problem. There is a solution that can help solve this problem. And this is a great segue into the right-hand side of the slide, which is typically the center of excellence is there to support the pain felt by a community of practice. And community of practice is, for all intents and purposes, everybody in your organization that works with data, that works with Power BI, that works with Excel, that needs to solve business problems by applying data and insights to it. And in an ideal world, like we have a community here, like a lot of you are presenters, like you join a group, you share insights, people learn from you. And a lot of you are also consumers, like you attend user group sessions and other community engagements because you have problems, you want to learn from the people that have more experience or more specialized knowledge than you do, you'll find the same thing inside every organization. There's always that one guy in finance that is a DAX wizard. Like he can write the measures that nobody else in the organization can write. And by having a community of practice where there are tools and processes to make it so that the people with the problems are put in touch with the people with solutions, and that once the person with the solution provides an answer, everybody can benefit from it, that's what we're looking for. And having champions, like those people that know a little bit more and are willing to share what they know, like we acknowledge them, we recognize them, we praise them in front of their boss and other leaders, like that's how we get the flywheel or the virtuous cycle going. And there also needs to be someone who is responsible for moderating or curating the community itself. You can't just build it like, oh, here's a Slack channel, there's my community, and be done with it. Because the first time that somebody comes and asks a question and there's crickets for a week, like no one answers them, they're never going to come back. It does require like a spike of upfront engagement, and then once there's mutually beneficial interactions, the investment from the core team decreases, but you need funding, right? Like in Microsoft, community is something that's hard to get funding for when you're competing with product. But if you can deliver the output, like deliver the business impact that the product org needs, community continues to get that funding. And like I said that this is hard, and you may be thinking, it's like, how the hell am I going to do that, right? Like this is so far above my pay grade. Like I build reports, I build data models. It's like, how the heck am I going to do these things? Remember that executive sponsor. Like if you don't have an executive sponsor, you're never going to get the pieces that you need to make this work. You can start small and build everything yourself, but that's really the hard way to do it. If you are picturing yourself in this position and you're like the little guy or little girl down at the bottom of the food chain, having connections to others that can help do the things and help move the things that need moved, that's really key. So just remember, this is hard. Having help, having an executive sponsor is really, really key. So sort of moving into the end game here, for that community. So we've got the center of excellence that supports and enables the community of practice with the goal of more people working with more data more often in the right ways as defined, as right is defined by the business and the culture. So a key characteristic of success is having a portal, like a single location where everybody goes for everything. It could be Teams, it could be Yammer, it could be Slack, it could be SharePoint. Like the technology itself just doesn't matter. The best practice is to put the portal and its resources where people are already working. Like at Microsoft, everybody's in Teams, right? So it's like all of our internal communities, there's a couple Yammer things, but everything lives in Teams for the most part. And this is where you're going to put things like reports and data, training, guidance, help. Like how do I open a ticket? How do I get a data source on a gateway? Where do I go for questions? Like things like that. Put them all in one place. And here's the key. Human beings are like water in that they choose the path of least resistance. If you don't have this portal today, your users are used to doing something and it's probably emailing you. It's like, hey, Bob, I've got this question. You helped me before. Can you help me now? And they do this because it's easy and it worked once. But if you want your portal and your community to work, you cannot be the path of least resistance, because if someone emails you a question and you give them an answer, you helped one person, right? Now you're going to get 20 more questions and you have to provide 20 more answers, instead of having that question and answer in one location that everybody can see it and search it and get value from it. So you need to become the path of greatest resistance. If someone, like this true story, if you email me a question, it's like, hey, Matthew, I've got this question about data flows. like I saw your blog and I want to ask you this. If you're a Microsoft person and you email me, my answer is no. No, I will not answer your question in email. And I try to be polite, but I basically say, we've got this internal Power BI community with thousands of experts and your peers. And if you go there, there's this entire community of experts that can answer your question. So go there and ask the question. And if you really need a personal question from me, tag me in your post. I will not answer your question via email. If you go there, I will do my best to answer it as quickly as possible. And like the first couple of times that I did this, like people were angry. It's like, well, why won't you just answer my question? And it's like, look, dude, I can't scale. Go there. That's the only place that I'm going to answer. And over the course of a couple months, the volume of email questions that I got dried up. I can't remember the last time I got one, because people know that the portal is their path of least resistance, so they go there. Win. And because of the center of gravity that we have around this, the Teams-based community that the Power BI Cat team has created inside of Microsoft, it's become like vibrant with hundreds of contributors, these experts and champions, and the Cat team only needs to answer like the hardest questions, like the weird edge case questions, because we have motivated and encouraged our community members to do the things that we need. And the final part of this final slide, and it's not the last slide, but it's the last real content before I start summarizing things. It's talking about the hard part of humans, which is motivating them. How do you get someone to do the thing that you want them to do instead of the lazy thing that they want to do by default, right? Because most people are inherently lazy, like guilty as charged. And this is information that I got from studying psychology. And I think the diagram I stole from a Psychology Today article online. But there are three primary motivators for human adults. So one of them is skill variety. So if you're doing the same thing day in and day out, it's hard to be motivated. It's great if you have different things to do at different times. One of them is task significance. How does the work that I'm doing fit into the broader process? Like if I'm doing data entry, where is the insights that come out? Like where's the value that comes out? If I'm just a little cog in the machine, I need to be motivated. I need to understand how my work and my position is valuable to the machine as a whole. And the third big circle is task identity. And this is really being able to say, the work that I'm doing makes the world a better place. This is why someone might work for Greenpeace or other humanitarian nonprofits to earn a lot less money, probably doing a lot more work, because they know that they're making a difference. Like these are the three things that motivate human beings, like adult humans, the most. And beyond this, there's two modifiers, like there's two extra things. Like one of them is autonomy. If I can choose what to do, I'm motivated. And even if I can't choose what to do, if I choose when or how or where to do it, like working from home, working on flexible hours instead of having to be at my desk 9 to 5, like we've seen during the pandemic, what a huge motivator this can be. And the final one is feedback. If you're working and working and working and nobody ever says thank you, or nobody ever says, boy, you screwed up, like you wonder, like, does it matter? Is anyone even paying attention? And getting regular feedback, including regular critical negative feedback, as long as it's helping you do your job better, this motivates you. And for a center of excellence and community of practice, like bringing it back to our context today, this means that the people that manage the community, when you see someone going above and beyond, like in the early days of that Microsoft Power BI community that I mentioned, every week we would look through to see who are the community members that answered other people's questions. And like the top 2 or 3 or 5, like it would vary from week to week, but a member of the Power BI Cat team would email them and their boss and their boss's boss to say, thank you for going above and beyond, like a summary of like why we're praising you and the business impact that you're helping drive, cementing it and why this is important for Microsoft. Like you, like in the visibility of your leaders, like you've really made a difference because you're doing this thing, and we wanted to give you our personal thanks for this work. It's amazing how a little thing like this, it makes them more likely to come back and back and back. And if you are like, raise your hand in Teams if you are a Microsoft most valuable professional. So raise your hands if you're an MVP. I'm not seeing any hands go up. Christian, aren't you an MVP? Okay, so Kurt is. So if Christian's not, maybe that's a problem to rectify. So Kurt, leave your hand up. Everybody else, raise your hand if you know what a Microsoft MVP or most valuable professional is. So raise your hand. So more hands are going up. Well, there we go, lots of them. But how do you become an MVP? The short answer is help others in the community. Microsoft recognizes professionals in the community who are blogging and YouTubing, answering questions on forums and community sites, and like writing books, speaking at conferences, organizing user groups. Like the people that reach people that Microsoft couldn't reach on their own. Microsoft, like you're saving us a ton of money. Like this is like there's a bottom line here, and we say thank you through this MVP award with the benefits and the information that we share as part of it. And even though like Microsoft puts a lot of money into the MVP program, there's always a good return on that investment. And in your organization, when you look for ways to motivate and encourage people, start with a thank you and then look for other opportunities as well. So I'm going to wrap up with a couple what I think are pithy inspirational quotes, and then we're going to have a Q&A break. But I want to mention I was like an awful student in college, but this is a quote that stuck with me from the early 90s when I read it in the preface to an object-oriented programming and design class. I'm going to read this verbatim. This is from John Gall, who is a complexity sciences expert. Like he studies complex systems. And John Gall writes, a complex system that works is invariably found to have evolved from a simple system that works. The inverse proposition also appears to be true. A complex system designed from scratch never works and cannot be made to work. It's like, holy moly, like, don't start big, start small. Like, look around you today, look to see what you personally can influence and make that small change, see what works, see what doesn't, refine it, then grow it. And this is a pattern like I see this every day around me. If you over-engineer something from the beginning, 99% of the time you're doomed, and you won't realize that you're doomed for months or years because you've got this grand vision of what you want to build. But the reality is you succeed when you start small, succeed small, and then grow based on that success. So, whoa, so really switching gears here. Sun Tzu, the author of The Art of War, said in The Art of War that strategy without tactics is the slowest route to victory, but tactics without strategy is the noise before defeat. So strategy, what do you need to achieve? Like, what are the goals that you need to achieve? Tactics, what are the ways that we can act and those actions to achieve the goals? And if you know where you need to go, but you don't know how to get there, you'll figure it out eventually, right? As you're figuring out what steps to take, what actions to take, because you know where you're going, you know what that strategic destination is, even if you're falling down or moving really slowly, you're always going in the right direction. But if you're simply acting, it's like, oh, I'm going to build a thing. It's like, why are you building the thing? If you can't answer that, you're just acting for the sake of acting. And then the final quote is the opening line from Anna Karenina. where Leo Tolstoy wrote, "All happy families are alike. Each unhappy family is unhappy in its own way." And you may be wondering, it's like, Matthew, what a stretch to bring Tolstoy in with data culture and Power BI. But think about this. The patterns and practices that I shared today, I've talked to hundreds and hundreds of global enterprise organizations, like the biggest companies in the world. I've talked to the people in those organizations that are responsible for defining and delivering their global BI and analytics strategies. And what I've seen is that for those companies that are successful, they do what I talked about today. Like, these are the things that every successful organization does. The details may be different, but they all do these things. But for the companies that are like we don't really know what to do, we keep throwing money at things and not seeing the results. Like there's a wide range, and all of those companies that haven't figured it out, their personal hell is their personal hell alone. And I want to emphasize that when you're trying to get from where you are now to where you need to be, like from your side of the river to the other side of the river, like building that data culture, or at least taking the first major steps, it's kind of like swimming across the river. But as you can see, like some parts of the river, the edges are closer to each other than the other. And when you look at other organizations, like they have a different river. And whether it's your starting point or your destination, or just the reality of where and when you're beginning your journey, it's always going to be hard. But depending on a whole bunch of variables that are unique to you and your organization, it may be easier or it may be harder. I hope that the resources that we've covered today, or the guidance that we've covered today, will help you connect those dots to make it more likely for you to be able to swim to the other side. And I want to mention like 2 quick slides before Q&A. And let me mention as well, Christian has these slides. He will make them available to download after the session is done, so you don't need to type in any URLs or anything. But
sure.
this is a 1-hour summary of like a huge topic. And if you look at the Power BI documentation side of things, I have worked with MVP Melissa Coates and MVP Peter Myers to publish the Power BI adoption roadmap. It's roughly 150 or 160 pages covering these exact topics. We're also working on the Power BI implementation planning guide, which is a lot more of the how do you do the things? Like, what are the parts in Power BI that you bring together to implement these types of patterns? It's going from the why and the what to more of the what and a little bit of the how. And these are both part of the Power BI guidance documentation that is like lessons from the field that the Power BI CAT team publishes. So if we learn something working with a customer, we put it in the guidance doc so that every customer can benefit from our engagement. In addition to this official documentation at the top, like early in the pandemic, I think it's around 2 years ago that I did this, but I've got a 17-part blog plus video series on building a data culture with Power BI. So it's basically the 3.5-hour version of what we did today. Little different focus, different format, but definitely valuable. And Melissa Coates and I are coming to the Past Data Community Summit next month in Seattle. Keep in mind, this is a paid event with a paid pre-conference, but we're spending an entire 8-hour day talking about this topic. So it's the Hitchhiker's Guide to Adopting Power BI in Your Organization. And you can attend either virtually or in Seattle in person. Keep in mind, it's like West Coast time zone. So if you are in Eastern Europe, attending virtually is possible, but it will be annoyingly late at night for you. And then the final thing that I want to mention, my team has published a set of dozens of Power BI customer success stories. I've mentioned, like, we've talked to hundreds and hundreds of customers. Well, a lot of them have said that they want to tell their stories on the Microsoft website as like becoming case studies or reference customers. We've got a lot of them out there where real world customers talk about the problems they had, how they solve those problems, how they applied Power BI and other Microsoft technologies to do it. Read them. There's like volumes and volumes of resources that are out there. So with no further ado, like this is the end of my talk. I think I'm coming in like right over an hour for my part. I want to be respectful of your schedule. Christian, any other questions that came in that we should respond to?
Well, there were not actual questions. There were two comments, really good comments from Brian and James about the necessity of the champions and their executive sponsors behind them. And James was right. Actually, having multiple champions in a company can benefit even more.
Yeah,
and there are also some comments about the MVPs and how they are helping the community and everything.
Yes, indeed. And I love the comment in there. Giving back to the community without being an MVP is also a good thing. So absolutely agreed.
Exactly.
And I don't want to minimize the work anybody else is doing, but like whether or not you're an MVP, there's all sorts of programs and ways for Microsoft to help. But we appreciate it either way. So I mentioned at the top of the call, it's my honor to be here today. Like you're not honored to have me. I'm honored to be here. And thank you, Christian, and everybody that made time out of their day.
Thank you, Matthew. Just for a few more minutes, if you want to ask questions, raise your hand and you can unmute and ask it for yourself. You can even turn your camera on for now. And then we'll go to the Enterprise DNA Raffle for a few minutes and then the wrap up.
Wonderful.
So if anyone has a question, raise your hand and unmute yourself.
Looks like everybody's quiet.
Yeah, and I love James' comment.
Well, if you ever get to Romania, James, it's beautiful and the people are wonderful as well. So it's definitely worth a trip.
You will see the Romania Power BI user group got pretty international today and in the last 1.5 years. So you'll see it for the raffle. So
well, if there's no questions, I'm gonna drop. So like I assume I'm not eligible for the raffle. I don't want to take a prize away from anyone. So thank you so much for having me. I love it. And if anybody has questions, hit me up on Twitter. It's often the best way to reach me in public. So thanks very much, everybody. Have a great week.
Thank you, Matthew. Thanks again. Let me share my screen for the Enterprise DNA raffle for whoever remained. As I said, you can unmute and turn your video on. Let's see with the last refresh how many participants do we have? Anna, I think you are one of the participants, right? Let's see. As I said, the Romania Power BI user group, in terms of members attending today, is pretty low and participating in the raffle, but we are pretty international today. So we have 12 raffle participants. Let me get their names. Refresh everything with Power BI and Power Query. Okay, copy everyone's name and then use the wheel of names for the raffle. Shuffle the names and good luck. Andreas from Germany, you are the first winner. Congrats.
Hello, thanks a lot. Thanks.
No problem. Let's shuffle the names again.
This year.
Let's shuffle the names again and spin the wheel for the second winner. Allspice 57.
Hey,
Congrats.
fantastic. Great.
You're the second winner.
Hey, brilliant. Thank you.
Well, I will send you an email to confirm your email addresses for the registration on the Enterprise DNA platform. Thank you all for joining today's session. I hope you loved it, and probably in 2-3 days the recording will be available on YouTube. As you are members of Romania Power BI user group, I will send an email to everyone with a link with the slide deck that Matthew presented. We are closing the recording now, but whoever wants to stay for some more chit chat, you are welcome to do it. And thank you all again for joining October Meetup.